Yeah, I probably the most disgusting thing that I saw was from Brian Tyler Cohen, who was like pulled one clip of Candace Owens being like, "Well, I respect that she says what she believes," or something like that. In conversation with Tucker Carlson, they're like, "Well, she's friends with Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson." I thought, and again, I thought it was very.
Imagine doing that in the context of trying to undermine another media figure's credibility and say that, oh, this person is lying and taking things out of context in order to smear me. And then you literally do exactly that in your response, where you supposedly debunk their article and their, rock solid reporting. It's just like, you're telling on yourself, bro. It's projection.
Oh, on top of that, Taylor shared with us in our interview with her that she was doxxed multiple times by Tucker Carlson's audience, that she had to move, that her parents' address was doxxed. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff. So to imply or to directly state that she's somehow friends with Tucker Carlson is absurd and a crazy lie to make in defense of the truth, which is what she's reporting. Or to make in defense of yourself as you face an accusation, which is truthful, I should say.
Right.
Revealing. Because if there was genuinely a problem with your reporting, then you say, okay, well, here's the actual contract. Here's what she got wrong. Here's how I can prove what she got wrong. And instead it was all of this misdirection of conflating things, of personally attacking you, accusing you of being the one who's really paid. Oh, and you're a secret Trumper, which is just completely ridiculous. There was also a lot of, let me respond to this thing that someone randomly on the internet said, rather than the actual reporting that you engaged in. And so to me, it was very revealing. I don't know how you can call yourself someone who is even left of center and at least grapple with the ethical and moral questions that are raised by accepting secret dark super PAC money.
Well, they don't even want to deal with those questions. Like, they just want to sort of sling mud and make these claims. And, something I have said from the jump is, if we got something wrong, reach out. Wired has a corrections policy. Like, show us any evidence that what we reported is not fact. It's been over a week. There's not a single correction on the story because none of them have disproved a single thing in our article. They've just been on this other tour, sort of just throwing everything at the wall to see what would stick. On Threads, one of the creators was literally calling implying that the term dark money is racist. Like, that's how.
Oh my God.
I'm not kidding. Like, that literally, it's like parody level. And
that was the other one that got me, is they had to not disclose their secret dark money funding to protect trans creators in red states.
Dude, that was crazy. Yeah, they had that in a clip on Breaking Points, and I hadn't seen it until then, but I was like, this is deeply deranged. This is wild. And, again, just to reiterate, you guys might be wondering, you're like, wow, you guys have covered this Wired story from every angle. You guys are like a dog with a bone. You just won't let it go. And in today's media, this in 2025, with so much happening all the time, the news cycle moves so quickly. So if there's an actual really important story, it's important that we stay on it. It's important that we all continue to focus on it so that the people who did something wrong aren't just let off the hook. A big strategy, another Trumpian strategy, is to just wait out the news cycle, to just fill the news cycle with so much that it's just going to move on and people's interest will eventually, wade. And then you can just kind of, get people to move on and forget all about it. That's what's convenient for people like David Pakman. That's what's convenient for people at Chorus, Brian Tyler Cohen, all these things. It's really important that we stay on it and we force it. And it's important to debunk one of the common things that people say, which is, oh, why doesn't Taylor Lorenz just publish the contract? If she has it, if Wired has it, if they've all looked at it, if the attorneys looked at it, why haven't they published it? And the onus isn't on Wired to make that contract public. Do you know who the onus is on? The people who are trying to get them to make a correction. Okay, Brian Tyler Cohen, because it is not journalistically acceptable to throw your source under the bus. And that was one of the things that was really baffling about Destiny. Right? Destiny did not seem to understand, or he pretended not to understand, why you wouldn't just throw your source under the bus, why you wouldn't just say, hey, this is the person that told me, and see, they have a real contract, right? Because all of the contracts are watermarked. So when the contract gets leaked, they'll know who was the person that leaked that contract, right? So that they can try and ruin that person's career, potentially litigate them because they may have signed a non-disclosure agreement. That's why you protect your source's identity, guys. This is journalism 101. If you take an entry-level journalism course, they'll explain all of this to you. So I don't want to hear from any quote-unquote experts who pretend not to understand this. And if Brian Tyler Cohen wanted to, or if he was able to, he would have come out and said, hey, this is what the contract looks like. It's meaningfully different than what Taylor alleged, and Wired should run a retraction immediately. But because he didn't do that, they've instead decided to sling mud, as Taylor describes here.
Yep. And I explained yesterday why they're taking that approach and why they're using that tactic. It's so they don't actually have to answer for any of the substance. And so they don't actually have to address the scandal that's been unearthed, because then they can just question basically the existence of what has now been uncovered, which is this contract, saying, well, if you don't do you even have the contract? If you do, you should release it. That's just moving on. That's just moving the goalpost away from what was actually exposed and the substance of that reporting onto just like this weird thing of, well, we don't actually have to answer for any of that until you do this thing, which you can't do, because as we talked about, it would threaten the security of the source in the first place, which again would impact the entirety of her career going forward. No one's going to want to leak anything to her if she throws her previous sources under the bus.
Yeah, 100%.
What this? Okay. What are we doing?
Like David Pakman and Brett, like these are people with like, what?
So in the reporting, just to lay out for everybody out there. So according to your reporting, there are restrictive clauses in the contract. For example, they have to funnel all bookings with lawmakers and political leaders through Chorus. So it's almost like giving over some semblance of your autonomy and your independence.
We talked about this a bunch.
You can't support or oppose politicians without Chorus's approval, which I thought when I read that one, I was like, I don't know why more people aren't talking about this particular portion, because that seems crazy to me to say you. I mean, that's insane. So why don't you talk a little bit about the restrictive clauses that you came across?
Yeah, there's a bunch of restricted clauses, like sort of some of what you just mentioned. They sort of narrow some of it by saying like with Chorus funds, right? So like, oh, we don't care if you do things without Chorus funds, but the idea is that this is the funding that you're receiving to like make a living, and you're investing a huge amount of time in this. So like, it's very silly, sort of like these separations that they try to make. They also have restrictions on sort of how you can talk about other people in the program. And this is something that creators in the group chats that we got screen recordings of were also debating. For instance, say one of your, the colleagues in the program or several colleagues in the program push misinformation about.
That's why they never hit up the Vanguard. You can't criticize any of the cohort colleagues. That's why they didn't hit us up, guys. They were like, well, that would kind of go against their business model.
Even if you were an employee of Chorus, right? And this is what's crazy that people are defending even this. Even if Chorus was a news outlet, Gavin, and even if all of these people that were taking Chorus's money we knew were hosts on Chorus, I would still be appalled at the terms of this contract. Even if they were all, like let's say Chorus is the new MSNBC, right? And they all have their different shows and they all go on at different times, right? I would be appalled if you weren't allowed to book your own guests, if you had to get permission before you could ask certain questions, before you could dissent with a politician that Chorus was affiliated with, before you could dissent with one of their Chorus affiliated broadcasters and challenge each other and disagree. Are you kidding me? We wouldn't even accept this, guys, if that was if it was totally transparent, because this is ridiculous. It is completely ridiculous to strip all that autonomy away from the voices. And what you're doing is you're just getting scripted propaganda. It might not be literally scripted, but boy, are the talking points coming down from up above. That's just crazy, because you limit the scope of discourse, right? This is where it does get really Noam Chomsky manufacturing consent, right? You just limit the scope of the conversation so much that it's an echo chamber where everybody just constantly agrees. And then you don't really have to do any deep manicuring of content, because you're forcing people to go to these check-ins every day. They all want to impress the bigger channels, so they're not going to go out on any limbs and disagree with those people. And the big channels are getting paid the most, and they don't want to dissent because they want to maximize their revenue.
Something and you want to speak negatively about that. Like theoretically under this document, it appears that they would not be able to criticize the other members of the program. And there's just a few things like that as well that just, to me as a journalist, like I would never sign an agreement like this, because clearly there is some, you are agreeing to certain terms that I think that, anybody who considers themselves like a honest journalist would not do, or at least certainly not do without disclosure.
Yeah. They should never sign that contract. Even if they don't enforce the things that are on the paper there, you should never sign the contract. In fact, in the article, you say one person, they didn't let one person's lawyer redline the contract. They basically were like, no, we're not allowing your lawyer to look at it and make adjustments and send it back to us. Basically, like, take it or leave it, which is very heavy-handed for this sort of thing. I mean, that's like very authoritarian for these sorts of negotiations, right?
Well, I have spoken to like managers and agents who have had problems with Chorus in the past. And this was in my last story, because I think managers and agents, like, their job is to advocate for their talent, right? And to like get the best deal possible. And previously, Chorus had used images of content creators without their consent, like just took people's images off social media and put them in their fundraising decks as if those people were like somehow affiliated with Chorus, and then use that to raise money and do the stuff. And so, and then in terms of the negotiating of this deal as well, I spoke to a couple of managers and agents that were like, yeah, I would never let my client sign something like that, because we want to make sure that we have a deal that works for my client.
If anybody's curious, I don't have an agent representing me.
Yeah, neither do I. The Vanguard is agentless. We're unowned and unbossed. What's the phrase?
Unbought, unbossed.
Unbought and unbossed. There you go.
And specifically,
the other thing that was crazy to me is the top tier was getting $8,000 a month. That's a lot of money. Although if you're David Pakman, it's actually not a lot of money. But for most people, it's a lot of money. Some of these people are getting $250 a month. Like, and there's a lot of work that's involved. You have to go to a daily messaging check-in and these weekly things.
You know what this reminds me of, actually? It kind of reminds me of an MLM, like a multi-level marketing scheme. That's what this fucking Chorus thing reminds me of. It's like, oh, the people at the top are making like $8,000 a month. But if you put out enough slop videos, then maybe you can fight your way up to the top too, you know? And maybe if you get some friends involved in Chorus, then you'll double your monthly take home. Like, does that not give off MLM energy? This whole Chorus thing just seems so sus.
Gavin, my friend, I think you might be on to something.
And you can't do that, and you can't do that. Why are they selling out so cheap? What are they thinking they're getting for this like $250 a month?
There's nobody else offering them anything. That's why. That would explain it to me, right, Taylor?
I think, yes. And I think it's like the allure of like working with the other big creators, feeling part of this program, getting access. Like, you'll see a lot of, like, I look at this girls, there's one of the girls that has this like pro-Democrat, like, you know, DNC apologia, like American Girl doll meme page. And I'm just like, what would possess someone to run an account like this?
Those words don't even make sense together as like a pairing. I don't know what that means, but go ahead.
She's on the highest tier, to be clear. She's on the highest tier, okay?
Wow.
Wild. But if you look at the content on her page, it's literally just like her hanging out with Chuck Schumer, you know, in the like in Congress, being like, hey, girlies, like,
just blatant access journalism, performative propaganda, of course.
I'm here, you know, with like these guys. And so they clearly thrive on like access and this sort of like feeling like they're part of this DC in crowd. And, you know, a bunch of these people that seems to be what they like really live for. And I don't know why else you would sort of sign some of these agreements. You know, aside from that, I mean, maybe you want to network, you want to be part of it. Like I did talk to another person that didn't take the deal, actually, that got offered that low amount, that was like, I'm not doing it for that, but was considering it because they were like, well, Brian Tyler Cohen's really powerful in the space, and like maybe he'll have me on his channel, right? Like maybe that will boost me somehow. Like, these big creators do wield power, and I think they sort of, that allure is appealing to certain people.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I think the point that triggered me the most reading your article is somebody says that the goal of Chorus is to, quote, build new infrastructure to fund independent progressive voices online at scale. That word, independent, has been so bastardized, and it makes me absolutely furious. It has to mean something. And if you're taking dark money, if you're taking billionaire money, that's like the opposite of independent. Independent has to mean something. And the fact that even knowing you're reporting, somebody could say that back to you, like, oh no, we're trying to create independent. It's like, what are we doing here? This is so backwards.
Yeah, because it's like,
it's all branding too. And it's just 100% all branding.
Yes.
Even in David Pakman's initial response to this, his justification for Chorus was, well, we got to help these independent content creators. He's like, you mean you have to make these independent content creators no longer independent? You have to whittle away their independence and take their fucking soul by basically just, you know, offering them a check? It's crazy. But yeah, it's totally branding. And I've noticed this not just when it comes to the left, but quite frankly, it is a way worse problem on the right. All of these totally, you know, corporate funded shows, claiming to be independent just because they're online. People just use independent media as like a synonym for online media. Like, oh, it's not.
We've been bitching about that for a long time.
Right. We've been bitching about this for forever because just like Kyle, we've avoided every opportunity to sell out. We've never taken any sponsorship money or anything like that, even though we could have taken literally, thousands and thousands of dollars at this point. We could be way, way more well off in that sense, if we wanted to be, but we choose to stay genuinely independent so we can call ourselves independent media. We actually want to be an alternative to corporate dark money media. So yeah, I think that's totally understandable. And again, it's just fucking branding because like I said, it's way worse on the right. Even though there's this new course thing on the left and there's an increasing amount of dark money flowing through the left to, sponsor propagandists. Like I said, it's the Tim Pool. I mean, people even have called like PBD like independent media and shit, or Joe Rogan independent media. It's like Joe Rogan literally gets paid like hundreds of millions of dollars by a giant fucking corporation, Spotify, to run his mouth. And they literally went through his archive and like deleted all the controversial episodes and like to call, but people will unironically say Joe Rogan independent podcast. Like, isn't this is a big, a big win for independent media. Can you believe that Donald Trump is going on independent media like Joe Rogan? They'll say it with a straight face.
Yep. And they're going to get into how we need to bring back a shame culture surrounding selling out because apparently people do not see the problem with it anymore, and they should. And Gavin and I are looking around like, are we crazy? Like, people will think we're dopes. They're like, why aren't you guys selling out? You have a great show. You could do it way different. Why do you do it like this? And we're like, bro, we didn't do this because we wanted to, like, we believe this shit. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And that's what Kyle used to talk about. He brought up he used to bring up a story. I doubt he talks about it anymore because it's not really relevant, but he talks about how backstage one time he was talking to Dave Rubin, right? And Dave Rubin was like, so you think you're going to try and get into TV work? And Kyle's like, what the hell are you talking about? Have you ever heard of my show? I constantly call out and criticize CNN. Why would I ever go work at cable news? Why would I ever go work in mainstream media? I've got my own thing over here, and it's actually really popping, dude. Right? And it just didn't make sense to Dave Rubin because all he cared about was getting a bigger platform, going more mainstream. It wasn't about the actual work, right? For us, it's about the actual work. It's about the politics, right? And that's what keeps us independent. So many people just see it as a lane to get clout. Or money.
Kind of like a program together. And in my opinion, I mean, I went independent for my field, and obviously I still write for a lot of mainstream media, but I really wanted to like be able to truly be like independent supported primarily, like maybe it was like 8 or 9 months ago, whenever I left the Washington Post. I think that disclosure is so key. And if you're going to be independent, and if you're going to sell yourself as independent, you need to be open with your audience and say, listen, like I am 95% supported by you. Like maybe I agreed to this program, but here's why. And, here's the full, I'm not under any editorial control, and here's like the full information about it, and be open with your audience. I think the problem here is this sort of backroom deals. And then they're presenting themselves online as, we're just normal independent creators.
Yeah, to me, that's what it comes down to as well, because the transparency piece, because like, this show that Kyle and I do is like as pure as it's completely reader supported. Kyle and I both in our separate shows have a policy. We'll never talk to an advertiser. We're not doing the like, Hims ads or Casper mattresses or like whatever, Blue Chew.
Fleshlights like Rogan used to do.
I see Sam Cedar out there selling a bidet. Like we're going to not do, but I also, like for the work that you do, your work is very expensive. It takes time. You have to go and do the investigative journalism. You're not going to be churning out a daily take the way that I can just sit in front of a camera and be like, here's what I think about X, Y, or Z. So I understand why people make somewhat different choices in terms of the financing of what they're doing than I've made. But to me, the key is like you at the very least have to be transparent about that. And I wonder how you think about it because, obviously you were at the Washington Post. I was once upon a time at MSNBC. So we've seen the inside of how these things work at mainstream institutions. And for all of our critiques of legacy media, there is a firewall between the people who are selling ads and the journalists who are doing the reporting or the anchors who are live on air. Like when I was on MSNBC, I had nothing to do with the ad department, the sales department. I had no idea what ads were playing during the commercial break. And part of my fear with the shift away from mainstream sources and towards independent personalities and creators and journalists is that you're actually getting an even more sort of like directly corrupt relationship in many instances.
be there.